in the first chapter of Engaging the Bodhisattva state, Shantideva talks about, who in this world has this incredible, beautiful gem of a mind, bodhicitta. And when we think of the people who have been kindest to us in this life, maybe our parents or best friends or, somebody who reached out to us when we were down and out, did that, and we have such regard for a person who does that. But does that person have the bodhicitta? Yeah. Just because somebody's kind to us, does that mean that they have bodhicitta? No. Just means they're doing a kind act. Okay? So the people that we regard as the kindest in our lives, just ordinary, I'm just talking ordinary level, are not bodhisattvas. But look at the qualities of somebody who is a bodhisattva and how those qualities are zillions of times more magnificent than somebody that in our ordinary life we consider to be kind. Are you getting what I'm saying? Yeah? Okay? And so when we do that, because we usually, in our ordinary way, this such and such a person has been so kind to me, I love that person so much, or I'm so attached to that person. They've been so wonderful to me. But when you think about it, does that person have the bodhicitta? Are they working for the benefit of all sentient beings? Throughout all time and space until everybody's enlightened? No. And underneath that, is their care and affection for us something stable? Yeah. Because we're so enamored with somebody, they're so wonderful, but is their care and affection really stable? Or is it just, a lot of it, some of it is genuine love and passion, and a lot of it is attachment, Maybe we're their child or their spouse or their parent or something, Their doctor, their psychiatrist, who knows what it is. Yeah, best friend. But, the qualities of that person, related compared to the qualities of somebody who's actually a bodhisattva, they're quite different. And we become to really have this amazing regard for somebody who has generated bodhicitta. And even though our bodhicitta at this point is contrived or fabricated bodhicitta, still having a high regard for bodhicitta and for bodhisattvas is something wonderful that will make us more and more open to making our bodhicitta really genuine and going beyond the fabricated and contrived state. Are you getting what I'm saying? Yeah? So think about it some. It's quite amazing. And just think of the difference between, on an ordinary level, who we consider kind, and from a Dharma perspective, who are the beings who are most kind. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so the question is, can't somebody just in an ordinary occupation, a teacher, a doctor, whatever, be very kind, and we have the feeling that they're being kind to us not out of attachment, but just out of kindness? Well, yeah, it's quite possible that there is a bodhisattva who manifests as an ordinary person. But let's say that person is an ordinary person, and they're very kind to others. Yeah, that's still very different from the qualities of a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is not just somebody who's kind to others. A bodhisattva is not just somebody who's kind to others. Even helpful in many ways. Because what is bodhicitta? Okay? It's a primary mind that aspires to attain full enlightenment for the benefit of sentient beings. Okay, so many of these people may have kindness towards sentient beings, but do they aspire to attain full enlightenment? If they're just ordinary sentient beings and not a, bodhisattva manifesting in that way, they don't even know about enlightenment. So I'm not negating their kindness. Their kindness is wonderful. But the kindness of a bodhisattva who is willing to go through everything it takes for 3 countless great eons to purify their mind so that they can be of the most effective benefit to others, that kind of love and compassion is far greater than an ordinary person who happens to be very kind in their own particular occupation. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in this life, what's the practical difference between that person she was describing, who's an ordinary person and in their job they're very, very kind and compassionate, and the bodhisattva? A bodhisattva is also going to be putting energy into realizing emptiness. They're going to be keeping the bodhisattva ethical conduct, maybe the tantric ethical conduct. They're going to be doing a daily meditation practice. Their love and compassion for others is going to be not conditioned on how that other person treats them. Yeah? So there's going to be a difference in how they spend their life and their time and all. Uh-huh. Right. Right. Yeah. And so the person you're describing is working for the immediate or temporary benefit of somebody, whereas a bodhisattva is going to be looking out for that person's long-term benefit. Yeah. How can they, like the person who just helps you in this life, maybe they don't even care about future lives and they aren't taking into consideration the kind of karma you're going to create for future lives. Yeah. Whereas a bodhisattva is going to have that really strong in their mind. And they're also going to be thinking about how to help that person in their spiritual practice so they too can generate bodhicitta. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay. So you're saying that Genlam Rinpoche was saying that even somebody in a helping profession, who isn't doing, who isn't a bodhisattva, some of their motivation may be mixed with other things as well. I mean, there's a lot of kindness, but they, a lot of people like to be needed. Yeah. And they like to receive thanks from other people. And they like to have a certain standing or image in the community. So it's not to put down their kindness, but just to recognize that it really takes a lot to have quite a pure motivation. Okay, so we'll go back to the Bodhisattva ethical restraints here. And one thing to keep in mind as we're going through them, well, a few things to keep in mind. I know for myself, when I first studied these, I was saying, gee, how can a person do that? How can a person be a Dharma practitioner and do that kind of thing? Like, there's one coming up about destroying a town or a province by fire. How can somebody do that? Or even the first one, disparaging others and praising oneself out of, the need, out of wanting offerings and respect. How can, somebody really do this? Many of them. There was one about, taking possessions from a meditator and giving them to somebody who's reciting. How can they do that? Or stealing from the triple gem. How could somebody do that? And I remember first hearing this and thinking, why are these the ethical restraints? And then as time goes on, and I start looking around, then I see people doing these very actions. And once in a while, I go, oh, I'm coming real close to doing one of them too. And then you realize, oh, these aren't such weird things. These are things that are very human. I mean, like the first one, the way it sounds, disparaging others and praising yourself. It sounds like, somebody's on some big ego trip just being totally pompous, saying, oh, that person doesn't know what they're doing, come give me all your money. No, that's too kind of, gross. It's like, oh, well, this student has been coming to our Dhamma Center for a long time, and they're one of our strong supporters, and now they're studying with somebody else, and they're giving their donations to that person's Dharma Center. I want them back. Yeah, they're my student, or they're my donor, basis of my support. So what do? You put down the other one, and you somehow extol your own good qualities with that kind of jealous, attached motivation. Not hard to do. Yeah. So, very interesting. Kind of be on the lookout for some of these. Or the same thing, what we were talking about, stealing things from the Sangha. Yeah. We may not take big things where the law would get involved. But certainly we would take, whatever we get, whatever we can get. Yeah, let's just take it for ourselves. And nobody will notice. So, yeah, something to think about. Yeah, there's some offerings there. They look really good. Yeah. It's almost time to take them down anyway. And Buddha's not going to eat them, for heaven's sake. And I'm hungry. Or my friend's right over there, and they could really use something that the monastery has. The monastery has so many of these things, and, that's my friend, and they don't have that. And anyway, they're my friend, and if I give them something nice, then they'll give me something nice in the future. So, I can take this from the monastery and give it to my friend. No problem. Very easy to think in that kind of way. Okay. So we're on number 6. So this is the second one. That from Shantideva? Yeah?
How to grab ourselves and really anchor us in no negative either?
Yeah, well, this is the whole purpose of when we have mindfulness and then introspective awareness. So with the mindfulness, we know our precepts and we know how we want to be, and we keep them in mind. Yeah, maybe not always consciously, but we know them. We evaluate our actions with respect to our precepts. And then when we see that our mind is going beyond the scope of our precepts, then we stop it. Yeah. But we have to have a lot of conscientiousness and a real regard, a real respect, and and regard, fervent regard for the value of ethical conduct. Yeah, if we just have this attitude of, well, these are just all rules, that somebody else just made up. Yeah, and I left the religion I grew up with because I couldn't stand their rules, so I'm not going to get into another one that has more rules. Yeah. If you have that kind of attitude and don't have a genuine respect for ethical conduct, then you're not going to have mindfulness or introspective awareness about your behavior. Okay. So, number 6. The 6th major transgression of the Bodhisattva vows, and the second in Shantideva's work, is abandoning the pure Dharma. First, we consider the object. The expression, the sacred Dharma, comprises much more than just the Mahayana teaching. Because remember, it was, which one? Number 4. That was repudiating the Mahayana and teaching some false doctrine. Okay. So here we're talking about Dharma in general, not just the Mahayana. Refers to the entire Buddha Dharma, the teachings of the Hearer vehicle, solitary realizer vehicle, and Bodhisattva vehicle. Repudiating the Mahayana doctrine means denying the validity of a work that explains both the vast and profound aspects of the path. So here, before we were saying just, the previous one was just repudiating the Mahayana as a general category. And here it could be talking about a specific scripture. Okay, rejecting the teachings of the Hearer vehicle implies refusing to admit that the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, for example, because that's one of the basic teachings of the Hearer vehicle. And rejecting, while abandoning the solitary realizer vehicle, entails notably spurning a scripture that expounds the 12 links of dependent origination, for in each case these topics are central to the doctrines of the vehicle in question. Okay, so they say that, the Hearer vehicle really emphasizes meditating on the Four Noble Truths, solitary realizer on the 12 links of dependent origination. Okay. Next, we consider the action. Rejecting the pure Dharma consists of asserting that a given scripture which expounds the central theme of one of the 3 branches of Buddhist teachings was not taught by Lord Buddha. In Tibet, this has rarely posed a problem because in Tibetan Buddhism, all the teachings of Lord Buddha have been preserved. Never has a Tibetan proclaimed, for example, that Lord Buddha did not teach the Hearer vehicle teachings. The issue exists mainly in countries where only part of the Buddhist teachings have spread. As a result, some people conclude that the other branches of Buddhism are not true Buddhist teachings. Okay, so this does happen when in some Buddhist communities where a particular text is important or that follows a particular canon, then it becomes very easy for them to say, oh, this teaching which is not in our canon, or this teaching, let's say if you're following the Pali scriptures, saying, well, this is a Mahayana scripture, this, the Buddha made it up, it's not a real teaching, or any of these kinds of things, like just clinging to your own tradition so much that you denigrate the scriptures of the other traditions and the other vehicles. Okay? Now, what we have in America is, well, in Europe too, is we have some people saying the Buddha didn't teach about rebirth. So do you think that violates this one or some other of the Bodhisattva vow, or what do you think about that? Because you have people now, no, Buddha didn't teach about rebirth. I'm not talking about people who say, I'm saying very specifically, people saying Buddha did not teach rebirth. The wrong view, yeah. But also, no, saying there is no rebirth is the wrong view. Saying the Buddha didn't teach rebirth, yeah. No, on this one, it can be part, some teaching from any of the vehicles or some scripture. Yeah, he seems to particularly be referring to scriptures, or major points like the Four Noble Truths or the 12 links, yeah, or emptiness, saying Buddha didn't teach emptiness. Yeah. Yeah, the Buddha quite clearly talked about rebirth. Yes, yeah, yeah. So, even in that terms of the holiday, the descent from the God realm, when the Buddha's when his mother had died, she went to the God realm. Yeah, so the Buddha quite clearly talked about other realms of existence. He would say, when in my previous life I was so-and-so, and this person was so-and-so. There's a whole section in the Samyutta Nikaya where it's talking about, how long samsara is, and if we had, the Tibetans use the example, in the meditation for how often sentient beings have been our mother. If we had a juniper bead for every time they were our mothers, it's actually in the Samyutta Nikaya. It's if we had a juniper bead for every rebirth, yeah. And then you see samsara as, limitless. So what about somebody who's saying the Buddha didn't teach rebirth? Would it be this one or would it be another one? Why this one? Yeah, they're based on the teaching of rebirth. The Buddha didn't actually set rebirth out as a doctrine. He assumed it. It's based on rebirth, isn't it? Yes. Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, that's getting off the topic. Yeah, you're completely right in what you're saying, but it's not our topic. But, yeah, I think it's number 4, teaching a false doctrine. Yeah. Yeah, but you can see how it could be number 6 too, like you say, because the other teachings are based on it. And, if you say the Buddha didn't teach the 12 links because he didn't teach rebirth, that would sound pretty strange, wouldn't it? Yeah. Now, does that mean that you have to believe in rebirth in order to benefit from the Buddha's teachings? No. You can benefit from the Buddha's teachings without believing in rebirth. Yeah. Does it mean you're going to be a bad Buddhist if you don't believe in rebirth? mean you're going to be a bad Buddhist if you don't believe? Yeah. Is there such a thing as a bad Buddhist for somebody who's not convinced of a certain point in the Dharma? No, there's no such thing as somebody who's a bad Buddhist who, just because they're exploring and learning and thinking about things and they have no, sure opinion about one thing or another. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it would. Well, I mean, the thing of, let's say, stating as a matter of fact, the Buddha didn't teach rebirth, or the wrong view, which will come later, of there is no rebirth, because the Buddha didn't teach it, and there is none, are two different things. Okay. But even somebody who's saying there is no rebirth, okay, then, and we'll come to that, because that's also the 10th of the 10 non-virtuous pathways, is you have to have a very strong belief. It's not just, well, I'm not sure, or I don't understand, or I don't really get how this works. It's absolutely, positively, this is rubbish. It doesn't exist. Okay? So it's quite different than somebody who says, I didn't grow up believing in rebirth, and it's not something that kind of comes to me naturally. Yeah. But I certainly benefit a lot from the Buddhist teachings. And I love the meditation practice and the talk about ethical conduct and love and compassion and forgiveness and how to remedy anger. This helps me so much. Yeah, I think that's good enough for somebody to take refuge. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If they have a hard and fast opinion that's a wrong view, yeah, and they're really kind of defensive and antagonistic about it, that's a very different ballgame. Yeah? No. Yeah. No, there's not schools that teach there's no rebirth. There's some people who, sometimes in the West, who say the Buddha didn't teach it. Yeah. Or there's some traditions where they don't talk about rebirth very much. Yeah, so it's not a point that's strongly emphasized in that particular tradition. Yeah. Whereas in other traditions, it's more clearly articulated as part of the teaching. Whereas the foundation background of the teaching. Mm-hmm.
So maybe I wrote it down wrong, but I had that suggestion was designed because people were also denying the relatives and performance. And so here comes number 6, which is repeating the performance. So
yeah. Yeah, I think the one where you're repudiating if you're saying when you say repudiate, what do you mean? What's the person saying? Yeah. No, the first one is specifically repudiating the Mahayana, and then the second part is expounding fallacious doctrines. Okay? What's falsely presented as a reliable teaching, and then teaching that. Not that I see. No. No. Yeah. As we see what we're coming to. Now see, this one is more, if you say that there's the here vehicle teachings, or the Buddha didn't teach those or whatever. That's this one here. Then we're going to come to some ones in the future where people are going to say, oh, you don't need to do some of those here practices such as keeping the Vinaya because we're great Bodhisattva practitioners. We don't need that stuff. So that's a whole other thing altogether. Okay? Okay. You ready to go on? Okay. So number 7, also from Shantideva. Also, with regard to a bhikshu or bhikshuni, even with degraded ethics, confiscating his or her robes, striking him or her, having him or her incarcerated, and making him or her defrock. Okay, so the 7th major transgression consists of mistreating an ordained person. The object, therefore, is somebody who has received ordination as a monk or nun in the Buddhist monastic tradition. As in the present context, it does not matter whether that person ordained has actually kept the precepts that he or she has taken. The misdeed is accomplished in relation to people who wear the robes of ordination, regardless of whether they observe their ethical discipline correctly or not. The object of our mistreatment must be a group of not more than 3 monastics, and if it is an individual, he or she must not be an Arya. Otherwise, the misdeed would be equivalent to the 5th major transgression, which is taking what belongs to the 3 jewels. Okay? So, if you're taking the robes of somebody, that's referring specifically to taking the robes. If it's from the whole community, then it falls under the 5th one. If it's from 3 or fewer monastics, then it falls under this one. And also if it's an Arya, it's for the other one. Okay? So, the motivation which is associated with associated with a disturbing mental factor is the cruel intention to inflict harm on an ordained person. On the other hand, there is no transgression when we confiscate the robes of monks or nuns, not to hurt them, but because their conduct is so offensive that we are convinced that their continuing to wear them will damage Buddhist teaching. The action committed on the basis of ill will can be of 2 kinds. It may be accomplished physically by confiscating the robes of ordained people, thus depriving them of the outer symbols of their ordination, or by obliging a monk or nun to defrock and become a layperson once more. Thus, the transgression is committed by abusing a monk or a nun in one of 2 ways. The first is to take away his or her robes, and the second is to make him or her break the vows of individual liberation, or just force them, put them in a situation where they have to return the ordination, even they don't break them. Okay. So, there's another paragraph here. So I want to ask you some questions, or make some examples here. So, in the Cultural Revolution in China, and also when they, the Cultural Revolution, the occupation in Tibet, when they often would take the monastics out of the monasteries, and make them return to lay life. So would that be an example of this? Yeah. So even if they didn't physically, go in there and take the robes, but out of fear of being imprisoned or beaten or who knows what, forcing the monastics to disrobe. Also, what they did during the Cultural Revolution is they sometimes made monastics have sex in public to break their vows. So that's something like really heavy negativity. Yeah, but that would be something that applies here. They did horrible things. Yeah, they forced them to do that. Yeah. we're talking about people who are monastics? No.
The thing says doing bad things ordained people.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the Bodhisattva vow that's being broken.
Right.
The soldiers who were fortunate to do it, they didn't hold the vow.
Right. Okay. Good point. Good point. Yeah. So the soldiers, are not breaking this Bodhisattva vow because they don't have it. Yeah. But they're doing the kind of action that if somebody had the Bodhisattva vow would fall under this. Thank you for the, yes, very good. Thank you.
Also, if a person is thankful for such life, and now they're born in a whole different situation.
Yeah, but you still have to remember that you have it from the past. Okay. Okay, I'm just trying to make some kind of example. Now, I remember when I was in Singapore, there was somebody who was a monk in Malaysia who was doing some naughty things. I think he was molesting some of the college students and sexually molesting the college students and the high school students who he was supposedly teaching the Dharma to. And he was doing some very strange financial things, if I remember correctly, as well. And some of the lay people just got very mad and actually made him, not mad, well, maybe mad, I don't know. Each person's mind is going to be very different. And, made him give back his robes. Okay. So now you have to look at, if, let's say they had the Bodhisattva vow, we don't know. Yeah. But a lot would depend on their motivation. Because if they were angry and they want to harm him and damage him, that would fulfill the criteria here. If they were thinking that his actions are so deplorable that they are harming the image of the Buddha Dharma and harming other sentient beings, and for that reason taking back his robes, then that would be an entirely different situation, wouldn't it? Yeah, but it doesn't matter. Even if somebody had already lost their ordination, this one is you can't go in there and, even if they've already committed a parajika, you can't go in there and forcefully take back their robes with a mind of anger. Okay? What it's emphasizing is even if somebody's broken their ordination and they're continuing to wear the robes, you have to talk to them in a more skillful way so that they understand for themselves that they really need to give it back. They need to give the robes back. Okay? Unless you feel that allowing that person to continue wearing the robes is so damaging to the Buddha's teachings, that then you feel you need to evict them from the monastery. Okay? So a lot of this one, you really have to see if the mind is filled with anger and wants to, with ill will, inflict harm on somebody, even if they've broken their precepts, or if your motivation is to protect the Dharma, and for that reason, evicting them. Okay? Yes. Yeah. Now, what's interesting, I mentioned this briefly at our monastic conference, is in our monastic vows, okay, at least the one for the monks, the ones for the nuns are slightly different. But for the monks, to have the parajika, the downfall, there has to be some penetration into any of the three orifices with a man or a woman, and the penetration is even the width of the hair. It doesn't have to be very much. Okay. And I was thinking of what some of these Catholic priests have done. Now, they may not have had intercourse with any of the children, but certainly what they did was very damaging. Mm-hmm. Now, in Buddhism, an inappropriate sexual object is somebody who's under the protection of somebody else. But in ancient India, 12-year-old girls were married off. 10-year-old girls were married off. This was part of their culture. Yeah? So they don't have the idea of child abuse as being something that's damaging to the child. Yeah? So it's quite interesting, because the celibacy vow is talking more about the state of celibacy of the person who has the vow. And they're not talking so much about the damage done to the other person. Okay? In the third precept for lay people, there it's bringing up more the fact that adultery can break families and cause a lot of harm. Okay? There it's, has more of that idea. But with the monastic one, it's really emphasizing the celibacy of that individual. Okay? Now, and so I was thinking, well, what do you do nowadays if you have somebody who's a monastic who molests a child without having intercourse? So they haven't technically committed a parajika, technically speaking. But you feel like it's horrible what the person did in terms of the effect on the child, and you care about the reputation of the Buddha Dharma. And everybody else in the monastery and all your supporters are just saying, this is totally unacceptable behavior.
So you talked about the precept last month. What do you think? There's a precept we have.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with a man that has a
lustful mind, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, those are the ones with the nuns. The nuns ones are much stricter. Okay, but I'm just talking about the ones for the monks. They don't, for theirs, no. They have that, but it's it's not a parajika. It's not a downfall. They don't lose their whole ordination from that. Okay, whereas the nuns do. Okay, for things like petting and stuff like that. Okay? But then, in our society now, people feel very different about child abuse and sexual abuse of children. So it seems to me, in that kind of situation, that you would really have to, well, first of all, I think legally, don't you? You have to report it to the government? Yeah? Yeah. So, yeah. Certain categories of people are required, So I would assume a monastery would fall under that. I mean, the uproar in the Catholic Church is certainly about the fact that they didn't, contact the lay officials. You can understand why they didn't, because, it's horrible publicity for the church. Yeah, they'd much rather deal with it privately. But the problem is they didn't deal with it. They just shuffled people around and the people continued. From another, yeah. Right. But, no, that's not it at all. Okay. So that would be the kind of situation where I would think that without anger, going to the person and saying, we have to ask you to leave the monastery because of this behavior. Yeah. And, it would be much better if you left your robes here out of compassion for the Buddha Dharma and compassion for everybody else. Yeah. But that's different than, being furious and throwing somebody out. Mm-hmm.
Where it happens now, but it seems like
Okay. So you're asking, is there a precept where a teacher is behaving inappropriate with an adult student, but nobody is saying anything? Now, it would depend a lot on what exactly was going on. Because, for example, because you were asking in terms of our monastic vows, for the nuns, one of our monastic vows is if we know another nun has committed a parajika, but we can conceal it and don't mention. So if we know that somebody, let's say, is sleeping with a man and then we don't say anything, then we commit a parajika. Okay. But the whole philosophy in monasticism is when somebody is doing something that is inappropriate, we help each other by mentioning it. Yeah. And so we're really encouraged to learn skillful ways to point out inappropriate behavior to somebody else. Because if we don't, then they could continue doing what they're doing, and they could wind up with a downfall and lose their ordination. Yeah. Or they could do something that is very damaging to themselves or others. So we're really encouraged, to say something. But we're encouraged to say something skillfully at the right time to the right person, in a skillful way. Okay, so that's where it really takes a lot of skill, because usually we see somebody doing something and we're mad and we want to go up to them and say, "Stop doing that!" And that's not the way you admonish somebody. That's the way you make them mad at you. And the way you make them defensive about what they're doing. Yeah, but we should, as Dharma practitioners who really sincerely care about each other, if we see somebody doing something that is going in the wrong direction, even if they haven't broken something, but they're kind of getting close, then we should go to that person and say, I saw this kind of behavior, and, this is the way it appeared to me. What was going on? This is something that it might be good for you to check up on and look in your own mind and see what was going on at that time and what you were doing and what you were thinking. Mm-hmm. And it's unkind, actually, if we don't say anything. But we see in the U.S., it's like, nobody wants to say anything. Because whenever you're the whistleblower, people get mad at you. And then especially if it's the leader of the organization, as we've seen, many of the scandals, it's the leader, and it becomes very difficult for people because they trust that person, and from their side, they trust that person's been kind to them, they don't want to just give it all up. And then also they've invested time and energy, and it's hard to really say, oh, I made a big mistake. Yeah. And then also the rest of the group could get very mad at you for saying things. Not only the person in particular, but the rest of the group. So it's a very difficult position to be in. But I think you have to kind of say something, again, to the right person in the proper way, And it's always better not to make an accusation. Yeah. It's better to say, I saw X, Y, and Z, like in a very NVC way, I saw this, 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 and this. Yeah. Now, I don't know what the motivation of people that was going on, but to me, that kind of situation, could appear to somebody else to be like da-da-da-da-da, which is really going, against the spirit of our precepts and going against the spirit of how we want to train our mind. And so you say it to that person privately. Yeah. You don't say it in front of everybody. Yeah. Or you talk to their teacher and you ask their teacher to say, to explore it or whatever. And now you're all going to come to me and say, oh, I saw you do this. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now this is an interesting one. Okay. Yeah, because you're saying within the text by Tonglen Zampo, one of the verses is don't point out the faults of another bodhisattva. Okay. So this again, it's a difficult situation because if somebody is a bodhisattva, you don't want to be criticizing them publicly and trashing them publicly and so on and so forth. But still, I think, and His Holiness says too, if somebody's doing something that is against the precepts, you have every right and you should go to that person. And, you see there's a difference between criticizing somebody and saying, I saw this behavior. Okay? Criticizing somebody is, you definitely have an angry mind. You want to trash the person. You want to ruin their reputation. You're very upset about the whole thing, versus somebody who sees something and, I don't know if this person's a bodhisattva or not, but I need to clarify in my mind what is happening. So without accusing them, I go and I just say, I saw this. Could you explain it to me? Yeah. I wouldn't go to somebody every time you saw them do a small thing, because then we would never do anything but go to people and complain about their actions. Yeah, I would do it if it's something, that's clearly damaging and taking them in a wrong direction, or endangering a whole community of people, or endangering that person's ability to keep the precepts. Yeah. Yeah, or even it's just that person, it's something serious. Yeah. But every little time we see somebody make a mistake, if we start going to them and pointing it out, forget it. I mean, we won't do anything except point out each other's mistakes all day long. So, this is why there's the practice of fortitude. We have to learn by learning to bear other people's little mistakes and then their big mistakes. But the whole idea is fortitude means you don't get angry and upset. It doesn't mean you don't act on the situation. Okay? Notions. Right. Yeah, it's very clear. Yeah. Yeah. Do bodhisattvas know that they're bodhisattvas? I would think so. I would think so. Yeah. But then somebody going around saying, I'm a bodhisattva, doesn't really mean that they are one. Okay? Yeah. Well, you think if somebody's done some study and they know that what bodhicitta is, and if they can look at their own mind and actually discern whether they have what qualifies as actual bodhicitta, then they would know. Yeah. If they don't know what the definition of bodhicitta is, yeah, then they're going to have a hard time knowing. But you would think that somebody who was a bodhisattva from a previous life would have, would meet the Dharma in this lifetime. Okay. But just because somebody thinks they're a bodhisattva or they think they've attained a certain realization doesn't mean they have. Yeah, because people can often be very mistaken in assessing their own abilities. That makes some sense? Yeah. Yeah. If you're getting mad, probably not a bodhisattva. Although the lower level bodhisattvas could get mad. Yeah, on path of accumulation, path of preparation, they could get angry. There's a story His Holiness tells about Geshe Potawa, who's one of the very famous Kadampa Lamas. And he was busy doing something, and some student came to ask him for teachings. And he got really mad because the person was really bugging him, and he picked up a stick and started chasing him around. But His Holiness said, we don't know what, for sure he was a bodhisattva, but we don't know what level, bodhisattva he was. Yeah, so the lower levels can get angry. Should we go on, or? Yeah, somebody who, upon seeing any sentient being, has that wish to attain enlightenment for their benefit. Yeah. So they're not looking at sentient beings as like, who are you?
Get out of my way.
Yeah, get out of my way. Why in the world are you doing that stupid thing anyway? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So number 8, Sastanti Depas, is it's committing the 5 heinous crimes. Yeah. Just, some of these, like this one, already that it's something that's a negative action. So the 8th transgression amounts to committing one of 5 very negative actions called the 5 deeds of immediate retribution, or the 5 heinous crimes. They are killing one's father, killing one's mother, killing an arhat, causing a split in the sangha, and spilling the blood of a Buddha with bad intentions. Of these, causing a schism in the sangha is the worst, and it is given particular attention here, as the Great Way explains, especially since the other 4 are actually part of the 3rd major transgression of out of anger striking others. Okay, so the other 4, killing one's father, mother, and arhat, are causing, blood to flow from a Buddha. Those would fall under the 3rd one of striking, out of anger striking somebody. And so that one of schism here is really emphasized. Okay. Now the one about schism is also emphasized in our monastic precepts, and causing schism in the sangha, or advocating for somebody who is doing that, is a sangha visesa. So it's the 2nd category that entails quite a severe disciplinary practice in front of the whole sangha. You are questioned about doing it, and if you don't admit it, then you have to go off and do penance for a while until, you're willing to confess it, and then you have to do 2 months of service to the sangha, and you have to sit at the end and wash everybody's feet and tell everybody who comes into the monastery that you're doing this practice called manata. Yeah. So it's very embarrassing. And then you have to be reinstituted in front of, for the nuns, in front of 40 people, for the monks, in front of 20 people. So it's quite a public thing. You want to really avoid doing those. Okay. Yeah. But causing schism in the sangha is one of them, or supporting somebody who is. So causing schism involves talking in such a way that you're going to split off 4 more sangha members from the community, and start to do some of the sangha karma outside the boundary or even inside the boundary. Yeah, and so you're splitting people off from the community, and it happened at the time of the Buddha with his cousin Devadatta, who was quite jealous of the Buddha, and so he made himself the big king of a new branch and propagated some new precepts which You know, he said, you know, people should follow what Buddha's saying. This is too loose. People should follow me, and we're going to go off and start our own group. And so that, you know, is very harmful. And you can see, well, I'll ask you, why do you think that's harmful? Yeah. Okay. It's going to have ripple effects. But yeah, what other reasons? Yeah, the stability of the Dharma, because the monastic community is the one that's carrying the things. And if the monastic community is fighting, the faith and confidence of the laity is gone, and also for the monastic's own practice. Yeah, when you have controversy going on in a community, everybody is so busy talking to each other about this one said and that one said and this one did this and whose side are you on, that nobody's practicing. Okay? So it really makes the Dharma degenerate because nobody's practicing. All people are doing are getting angry and gossiping. And there's a story in the sutras about the monks at Kosala who were so argumentative that the Buddha just said, bye guys, I'm going off into the forest. I'm not hanging around here with you. You know? I mean, the Buddha just left because these people didn't want to give up their grudges and their anger. And they're so busy just attacking each other. So it's very damaging for the people's individual practice, for the faith and the laity, for the existence of the Dharma. It's really not a nice thing. Yeah. So that's why, you know, there's always going to be conflicts. Always. Even you have one person, that person is going to have conflicts with themselves. You know, so long as you have ordinary beings, you have conflicts. But the idea is to learn to resolve our conflicts in a skillful way so that we all grow and we learn something. Yeah. Conflicts are natural. They're always going to be there. But to resolve them skillfully is, you know, the real talent. And that's what we're trying to develop in our practice, isn't it? And through living in community is how to resolve things in a skillful way instead of just getting so mad that we stomp our feet and say, I'm fed up and bye. Yeah. And I don't care if there's snow on the road, I'm walking down it. Okay. Yeah, Mexico seems to have some kind of karma where the groups are constantly fracturing and, you know, bicker. One group is with different factions and bickering, and then they break into two groups, and then each group again within itself, this one here and this one here, and then they, yeah, you can see it's a lot of wasted time and energy, you know? And it makes a lot of people quite confused and lose faith. Yeah. The Latin blood? Yeah. Well, the Quebecs are Latin too. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. You're not like these Anglo-Saxons who are just so dull.
It's true though. Well, I'm not saying dull, but when I moved to Vancouver, like, my goodness, the way I was acting was inappropriate.
Ah.
I had to learn to calm down and, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We scream at each other and,
Yeah. Yeah, there's some cultures that are like that, aren't they? Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I would say most cultures people have anger, but it's just how you express it. Yeah. Quiet and under the surface and like that. The Latins are just yeah, but they both have anger. Mm-hmm. That's a very big question. Yeah. That whole split that has occurred. Well, first of all, the Sangha has to refer to a monastic community. Yeah. But it's an interesting question because in a couple of the monasteries in India, the people who are doing that practice, they kept their own Kamsan building, and in Gandhi they even built a wall, and they made a different monastery. But they talked about it. I heard maybe it wasn't actual schism because there was a lot of conflict. But see, the schism actually happens when you do a Sangha karma together. So maybe the different Sangha actions together, So maybe they hadn't done a Sangha action in a different place. But what happened in the meantime is after years of discord, then they made it into 2 monasteries. They agreed. Yeah, so at Gandhi, the people who do that practice, they have their buildings, they have a wall around it, and they do their practice there, and the other people the majority has. And the same thing happened at Saramay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 In fact, they made the different monasteries maybe 3 years ago, something like that. Even before, one time, it was so bad at Gandhi they had to call the Indian police. Yeah, because they were fighting with each other. So, that comes quite close. Quite close. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I think if people, you have to look at every individual situation, and you have to see what's going on in people's minds and how they're acting and what they're doing and so on. Okay? Yeah. So I'm not accusing these people of doing schism because I don't know. It has to do with the technical definition of doing a Sangha karma. And it sounds like at the end they got together to agree to separate. Yeah. But certainly in the meantime, there was a lot of tension and friction. And you can see in that whole thing a lot of, real misfortune. And the reputation of Buddhism suffered. Yeah. Many people got very, very confused in their Dharma practice, And sometimes people just spent a long time twirling around the whole thing, not knowing which way to go and what to do. A Sangha karma is a specific, you have to have certain number of monastics together to do certain formal monastic procedures. Okay? So for example, when we do our confession, there is a Sangha karma involved. When we make a decision to do this, that, or the other thing, in disciplinary things, when people are ordained, to take the full ordination involves the Sangha, having a motion followed by a certain number of repetitions, and everybody agreeing to it. Okay, so a Sangha karma is an official action of the Sangha. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. Why is that? Yeah. Why do you have to have a certain number of people? Because there's a difference when a group of people are together. And, when there's just 2 or 3 people, it's just 2 or 3 people who happen to be together. When it's 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 or 100, you're really a community in a group. Yeah. So they set off a particular demarcation line for the number of monastics that you need to perform certain actions. Okay. We're getting way off the topic. I don't know, perhaps that's okay, but okay. But even in this one, because we're going to have to stop now, I don't know particularly, I don't want to say it was a schism in the Sangha, but we could certainly say that all the tension and the anger was certainly not good for people individually or for the group. And some people did remove themselves. They maybe didn't take, they just themselves removed themselves, but, from the tradition or from whatever, Then there was another verse here. No, that wasn't it. Okay. So we've done 8. But all of this is something really to think about and to make many examples about. And so even if some of these things don't fit the exact definition that's being expressed here, to just think, well, what kind of things do I want to get involved in? What things do I not want to get involved in? Why not? But it is also helpful to know the specific details so that you can tell if there's been a definite transgression or not. Okay? And in all of these, to really think about, well, why? Why is this a Bodhisattva vow? Why is this something that the Buddha would say for people aspiring for enlightenment, that they should not get involved in these things? Okay? Because I think the why is very important. It's pointing to mental states and certain kinds of actions and the effects on ourselves and on others.